Welcome to the Everything Epigenetics podcast, where we discuss DNA regulation and the insights it can tell you about your health. I'm Hannah Went, and I'm the founder of Everything Epigenetics. Welcome back, everyone. I have a great episode for you today. I feel like I say that before all of my episodes, but this one is so exciting because we're talking about dogs. We're talking about longevity. We're talking about epigenetics. So we cover a lot. My guests are Dr. Christopher Mentיר and his brother, Nicholas Mentir, as well. We go over how they actually became involved in the epigenetic space and specifically the dog aging space. We talk about how long dogs can actually live and if there's a terminal canine limit to life. And also, when it comes to aging, how do the epigenetic processes in dogs compare to those in humans? Are there actually any other unique factors that make dogs a special case? We then dive into their company, WoofGenix. This is a company that is rolling out several different products as it relates to dogs' lifespan. Their whole goal meaning they want dogs to live happier, healthier, longer lives. They have a WoofAge product, a WoofSpan product, and a WoofWellness product that we dive into on the podcast. We even talk about, from a vet's perspective, what the most promising ways are that we can help our furry friends live longer and healthier lives. We also talk about rapamycin and other pharmaceuticals that are making a wave in the dog aging space. Can these pharmaceuticals actually extend the lifespan of dogs? How do we break that down, and how can we actually learn from those types of interventional treatment studies? We then end with how people can get involved at WoofGenix and even things like the Dog Aging Project, talking to their veterinarian, even volunteering within certain nonprofits that are passionate about dog aging research. And we also talk about the most exciting future projects that involve canine aging research, other big trends and developments that we expect in this field. Now, a little bit of background information into my guests. Dr. Chris Mentir is an experimental pathologist, serial entrepreneur, and longevity enthusiast. He actually completed his PhD work in the Levine Laboratory at Yale, where he developed cellular models for disease. He has co-founded several companies, including Royal Flagship, a data-driven e-commerce agency that studies supply chain networks and market. And then he's a partner at Mentir Capital that specializes in consumer technology startups. He co-founded WoofGenix with his brother, Nick, to bridge this gap between technology and harnessing the canine genome to provide personalized and preventative veterinary solutions at scale. Now, Nicholas Mentir is also a serial entrepreneur with expertise in distribution, finance, economics, and consumer analytics. He also co-founded Royal Flagship, and under his direction as CEO there, the company grew over 14,000%. It was recognized by Inc. magazine as the 39th fastest growing company in the Pacific region. He's also a partner at Mentir Capital, and he's a passionate dog lover, so he saw this opportunity to advance epigenetic testing and at-home diagnostics to give dog owners peace of mind and tangible data for making informed decisions about their pets' health as they age. Now for my guests, Chris and Nick Mentir. Welcome to the Everything Epigenetics podcast, Chris and Nick. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us, Hannah.
Yeah, so we actually first met through your new company you all have, WoofGenix, which is super exciting. You all are conducting the world's largest private canine genomic study through a citizen science approach. That's directly from your website, and you're taking all these samples from dogs and really starting to quantify their epigenetics and maybe even some genomics as well. So we'll get into the weeds and talk about that later, because personally that's what I'm most excited about. But we're really going to be focused on dogs, their longevity, and epigenetics in dogs and what that means. So it's like both of my passions really combined. I've always been a dog person. I actually almost became a vet and started off majoring in animal science in college at the University of Kentucky, and then switched later on. So, who doesn't love animals? But to get us started, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how both of you ended up at Wolfgenics, like in the epigenetic space, and then maybe the dog space came first, or vice versa.
For sure. Yeah, I can take a stab. So Nick and I, brothers, we've, serial entrepreneurs, started a number of companies, and Wolfgenics was one of those companies that kind of just formed so effortlessly and naturally. So at the tail end of my PhD, I studied with Morgan Levine at the Yale School of Medicine, and a lot of my work was characterizing and trying to understand what these epigenetic clocks are actually capturing. And kind of around that same time, Nick and I started a company called Royal Flagship, which was in the e-commerce world. So we had a lot of experience with understanding consumer brands and trends. And so it kind of naturally formed, obviously us being really interested in dogs, that we know so little about dogs in regards to their epigenetic status. And there was just a ton of opportunities to take what early but fascinating science that was coming through the pipeline on the human side with epigenetics and actually look at that in the realm of dogs. So we started the company, and, now we are a year later, and, we're making great strides. But yeah,
I guess to add a little bit to that, being brothers growing up, we've always been surrounded by dogs, and to be able to use, our understanding of the science and our understanding of, business in general to be able to really tackle and solve problems. In this case, being able to find ways to extend, the number of lives or years and healthy years that we, have for our best friends. And so, I guess like for us, it was something that we saw as an opportunity in the business world to apply science in a way that's, really at the cusp of doing something super interesting. So we're excited to kind of break into that with you, Hannah.
Yeah, I'm so surprised no one did this earlier. It's kind of like, duh, why didn't someone think of this? People care more about their animals than maybe even their like family members or friends or significant others. So it's really interesting. Growing up, I always had a dog. I had Basset Hound, Golden Retrievers, Great Pyrenees. So kind of these larger breed dogs, minus the Basset Hound. But we were always really taught to believe or think that one dog year equals 7 human years. I remember my sister Claire, this is like not a funny story, but she gave Bella, our Basset Hound, like a little bit of beer in her water bowl when she turned like 3 or 21 in dog years, I guess.
Yeah.
And we'll also talk a little bit more about, how bigger dogs have shorter lifespan and why we think that is. I love larger dogs. I know you both know this as well. I had a Bernese Mountain Dog. Her name was Evie. She participated in your study we'll talk about later too. She just passed away, unfortunately, in May unexpectedly. So now this is even like closer to me. My question then, I guess, is how long can dogs actually live? Like, is there a terminal canine limit to life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we look at the human side, we know just by the number of people or dogs that are alive, there's going to be a higher kind of stochastic effect to the longevity increasing. I think for dogs, we see, in a good example is to look at like sledding dogs, like I would say the healthiest in terms of gene pool diversity or fitness, and also in terms of their exercise and diet. Those can live into, well as the, 20, 22, 23 years old. So I think that's probably what we characterize as a good goal. But unfortunately for most companion animals in, at home care and kind of with the level of inbreeding we have is, you're looking at 10, 12 being more of a realistic lifespan. But that's what motivates us so much. And I think what you touched on earlier is an interesting point, is why hasn't this been done? I think that's what, as we get deeper and deeper in the veterinarian is, having kind of been from an outsider's perspective, always having that interest in dogs, always having dogs and having the scientific kind of backing with epigenetics, as we continue to ask that question and be surprised, but also optimistic about what we really can do. There's so much opportunity. So I think getting to that 20-year limit is definitely feasible. It's just, we have to figure out ways to be proactive with prevention.
Also too, I guess when you look at total number of years, that's obviously a goal to see, how can we expand, to the maximum number, whatever that may be. The sledding dogs is a good example of, you can definitely see dogs getting into the 20+ year range, but also the number of healthy years. So, using an anecdote, we had a golden retriever growing up, the last year of its life was, unfortunate. We'd always joked around about how, he had an endless garbage pit of a stomach, could eat, forever. But we knew, his years were limited when he got to the point where he stopped eating completely. And you could, watch, the animals suffer. And so it's also looking at it from a total number of healthy years. So, even if you can only extend a dog's life by, let's say 20, 30%, can we get to the point where the suffering on the tail end of the life of the animal is reduced to near zero? And so that's another big initiative that WoofGenix is focused on, using epigenetics to find a solution there.
Yeah, good point, Nick. Yeah, that lifespan and health span side of it. I didn't actually know that about sled dogs. They're larger dogs, they're healthy, they're like built to perform a certain task. So that's pretty interesting. And the golden retriever example is a good one too. They're really prone to cancer, kind of when they hit a certain, limit in life, they go downhill very drastically and very quickly. That happened to my golden retriever, Zoe. My parents still have two now, Goose and Sailor. And then, my friends who have golden retrievers, it just seems like overnight it'll go downhill, and that quality of life is just devastating. So kind of going into that question a little bit more, like we've been talking about, there's a lot of really large, giant breeds like Great Danes. They usually have an average lifespan of 7 to 10 years. Tiny breeds like Chihuahuas live 14 to 16 years. So we're talking about this idea that different breeds have these different lifespans. So not only do they have those varying lifespans, but it's possible that aging and age-associated diseases progress differently among breeds, just like the example we gave with golden retrievers and cancer. So that just seems super unusual. Very few other animals in general have such drastic, extreme lifespan variation within the same species. Larger a mammal is, the longer its expected lifespan is. A mouse may live only a couple years. That's why they're used a lot in research and science. Elephants live over 60 years or can. So when it comes to aging, is there anything else we can add, or how do those epigenetic processes in dogs compare to those in humans? Like, are there any unique factors that make dogs a special case? I know you mentioned maybe like the inbreeding could also be a factor. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the most diverse species we have on this planet as well.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of like really interesting questions to unpack there, because you have, on one hand, you have size. So typically larger, animals, mammals live longer. Now you do see limits to that, obviously, within certain, breed diversity or genetic backgrounds. Like elephants is a good example. They have extra copies of certain genes that make them more resistant to cancer. Other animals, may not be so lucky. There's even examples of environments like the Greenland shark living to be hundreds of years. So I think biology has adapted this just crazy ability to be resistive and resistant to a particular environment. So I think dogs, unfortunately, have not had to evolve through selective pressures to make them, I think, fit, so to speak. I think there's this idea of them evolving to basically cater to more of like the happiness paradox of human nature. So I think that dogs, the larger they typically are, the worse off they are in terms of longevity. But there are examples of some relatively long-lived breeds. There's also examples of now more inbred, like French bulldogs are a good example of these dogs have a slew of issues. So I think this is what's fascinating and really just makes our work so much more, I think, impactful at WoofGenix is it's hard to find that level of diversity in the human pool. And I think that but in a predictable sense. But what I mean by that is that we know certain breeds have predispositions, and we can actually look at that as a potential predictor for epigenetics and say, what is going on kind of underneath the hood? And also for certain breeds, whether it be cardiovascular risk factors, cancer risk factors, is we can actually, with enough data, actually really get really good precision metrics and numbers that are going to be even more granular than just looking at size in general. So it's a really fascinating pool just by looking at, different breeds, sizes, but there just is so little we know that, we could be uncovering things that, has really not been done before.
Absolutely. Anything to add there, Nick?
I think that the interesting piece about dogs is they're kind of in the sweet spot where, to Chris's point, there's a lot that we can uncover and learn. But also, given the total number of years that dogs live, we can learn a lot faster than on the human side. So a lot of the developments that we're seeing on the human side can take, in some cases, 7 times longer. Going back to your original example, Hannah, of what we had originally thought, 7-to-1 ratio. So there's a lot more that we can learn about dogs, but also we can, help apply that to the human side. And so, I think that for us that's very much the goal of WoofGenix, is to, uncover all these things here on the dog side, but see if, how can we apply some of this that we're learning in a more accelerated rate in the human world.
Right. Yeah, I'm hearing a couple things. One, it's just so early, right? We're scratching the surface, which is extremely exciting. But then number two, maybe it's our fault as humans regarding the shortened dog lifespan, because you're right. Like they're, maybe that's the reason the sled dogs live so much longer, is because they're doing what they were built to do. And then these pets that usually are just in a home, like their entire goal is to make people happy. They're not necessarily evolving for maybe any other reason. So that's an interesting hypothesis.
Yeah. I even think if you look at how breeds, like what we characterize as breed now, even like is a pretty loose, like obviously you can do a breed test, but or kind of the 18th, 19th, or like even 20th centuries when breeds were coming about, they were bred for a particular purpose. Now dogs are bred to basically, be hypoallergenic, to be an apartment dog. They're bred to have a good personality, to be a family dog. So those aren't necessarily selective pressures that are going to lead you to be more biologically fit, so to speak. But that's what makes, I think, the field so much more fascinating right now, and also as a genetic case study, is it just gives us all the more opportunity to try to have an impact. To what Nick was saying about health span, is that there shouldn't, and definitely this is our hypothesis, is that there's a lot more we could be doing to give our best friends in this case better life. It's just not being done because we don't have the tools at our disposal.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. I think the history of even Bernese Mountain Dogs is really interesting. So, they were traced back to the Roman invasion of Switzerland over 2,000 years ago, and they have a really interesting backstory. They were used to pull carts and do they were definitely a working dog, but they almost went extinct at one point. So now they have this website called Burner Grade. It's a really screwy old website, but it actually traces the lineage for all Bernese Mountain Dogs. If you enter if the owner enters their data and stuff. So I think that could be, helpful and useful for studying dogs like this. I think you're right, Chris. There's all these poodles come to mind, right? There's all these mixed breeds with poodles to make them hypoallergenic as well. So it makes for definitely an interesting study example. So I want to jump into Wolfgenics though, and the study you all are doing there. I remember going to your website, entering my information, receiving a kit, forcing Evie to take a swab from her mouth. It was really, really easy. And then, sending the sample back and you all processing it. So talk to us a little bit about, Wolfgenics, kind of some of the exciting discoveries you're coming across in that canine longevity, and what you're really building there.
Yeah. So for starters, we're trying to understand, just canine epigenetics in general. There's so little, that's been published. There's some really compelling literature that we can capture and follow similar principles, training mechanisms that we've done on the human side of dogs. But so our primary goal was to just understand if we can capture and build measures that could be working for the whole. So that means that our primary goal with Vercoe WAGs, the Wolfgenics Aging and Genomics Study, was to capture as many dogs as possible from as many home environments as possible, breed, mix, purebred. So to try to get as much participation. And really, we did a fantastic job of getting pretty much every corner of the country, socioeconomic status, to get different diets, behaviors. I mean, people have so many different tendencies for how they care for their dog. So that was kind of our primary goal with this first step, as we're calling WAGs 1.0, is let's see if what we're getting from the initial epigenetic results is what we'd expect. And it is. And we actually have some really, really great initial results that leads us to believe that even, and this is, I think, a fascinating point that many probably overlook, is that the size, we're talking about an order of magnitude. So a Chihuahua versus a Great Dane, we actually even had a Mastiff that was nearly 200 pounds that recently joined. So, I mean, these are just seismic differences that we probably take for granted on the human side so our first goal was really to say, is this possible? And very much not only is it yes, but we're finding very interesting stuff in our data that leads us to believe that the sky's the limit with how we can use epigenetics to predict not just biological age and use that as a tool, but also actually dig into more granular metrics for the disease.
Yeah, Nick, do you want to talk about even maybe some of the products coming out from Wolfgenics, like what that's going to look like? Do people get, when we talk about epigenetics, the first thing that comes to mind, or maybe they even hear about the biological aging first. So will you all have a biological age for your dog, and what are the implications there? What does that really mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess too, I could first start out with, we actually have an app. So Wolfgenics has an app, and part of the reason that we wanted to launch an app is to create a community. And so, with this, we were pleasantly surprised the number of people who were wanting to participate in the Wolf Genetics study, and we're willing to really invest, 15, 20 minutes actually to, fill out the survey and give us the information that we need, collect the saliva samples so that we can, really understand, from the science perspective. And so we launched an app so that people could stay involved with everything that we're doing, and be able to have access to some of these products that you're speaking to. So right now, there's 2 products that we're launching on the epigenetic side. One is called WoofAge, which is understanding of your dog's chronological age. And then we have one called WoofSpan, which is in large part going to be hitting on the dog's biological age. And to break that down just in layman terms is obviously we have, the age of your dog, which is, synonymous with the birth date of your dog. And then you have more of the biological age, which is, understanding, well, maybe what is the true age of your animal based upon a number of different factors that we're, analyzing and understanding. And I think the important piece about both of these tests is, it's an evolving process. And so for us is, there's various things that we're able to understand early. But, participating in these studies is allowing us to just make our measures that much better and be able to better understand, again, getting back to the health span and lifespan of animals. So those are the 2 products. We also have another one, which is more in the blood testing side, which is called Wolf Wellness. And those are providing more of a mass market application to what kind of exists more in the concierge side. And so kind of across the board, we're finding ways to deliver products and services to people in a mass market way. Both WoofAge and WoofSpan are coming soon. WoofAge is going to be launched here actually very, very shortly. And so the best way to find out about how to be a part of that is to download the Wolf Genetics app, where we provide, news updates and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have the app too. I was just like scrolling through it a little, and it's so cute. It has the WoofAge, the WoofSpan. And then I didn't know you all were doing the Wolf Wellness, like more of that concierge program, which is awesome. So I think they all could be super useful because if people are adopting dogs and they don't know the age of their dog and want to know how old it is, they could do the WoofAge. And then for people who do know the birth date of their dog, or even just interested about the biological age, the health of the overall pup, then they can do the WoofSpan as well. And then would you all be, let's say, for example, someone does the WoofSpan test, biological age of the dog comes back higher. Would you all be recommending therapies then as well? I know rapamycin is a really big topic, so it has to come up during this talk, right? There are studies that have shown rapamycin to actually increase dogs' lifespan by about 30%. So curious to know if you'd be making recommendations as well.
Yeah, and I think Nick summarized WoofSpan really, really nicely there is, trying to understand kind of this health span state of what the dog's aging is actually in terms of the actual fitness function and disease risk. But that's going to come, this was our primary goal, is to not just give a metric that isn't somewhat actionable. So right now, it's obviously still under development, but we're looking at things like kidney, liver function, cardiovascular risk for disease, cancer. So we're fitness scores. So we're trying to give people essentially a report that would give them proactive steps that says, loop this in or mix this into your typical veterinary care routine every 6 months or 12 months. And this will essentially be a compass to help you guide care to a more productive sense. But yes, very much, we're actively involved with various clinics. We actually have a genomics trial that's related to rapamycin called CLEAR. So the canine longevity epigenetic assessment with rapamycin. That's very recently started, but we're actually investigating epigenetic changes that can occur with different oral forms of rapamycin. So we're highly interested in understanding kind of what you can do with this data, because the test alone, is just the starting point for us, which is also why we created this concierge blood testing network called Wolf Wellness, which we can unpack more. But it's definitely very much something that we're working with. We're working with veterinary. We're working with owners. We're trying to understand kind of what is the most value they can gain from this type of testing. We're also working with, we can be more public soon, is working with a bunch of companies. We're trying to understand large research organizations. So we're very much in this space of trying to be collaborative. We want this to be something that we can test other people's compounds, that we can understand what fitness routines. I'm even looking into, for example, training dogs or service animals that maybe have a more fit biological age. So really trying to say, when we have this level of granular biological understanding, what does it mean and what can, so definitely linking it to some type of prevention is our highest goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to just add one other point to that too is it provides a level of objectivity to kind of the actions that you're taking. And so the purpose of Wolfspan is not a one and done test. It's meant to be taken over the course of the animal's life, to be able to provide some objective measure to the things that you're doing, such as, food, exercise, various, medical devices. And so it's a way for us to be able to track over the course of the life, in a more objective way as to whether or not, what you're doing for your animal is actually, moving the needle, so to speak, to be able to improve the overall health span.
Yeah. And would you say, Nick, that test would be like every 6 months or so? Is there kind of an estimate?
The frequency right now would be biannually.
Okay.
And so as we go, we're going to see if that needs to be changed based on, breed, size. But right now the standard is twice a year.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's interesting. I think it could help really even pet owners, right? They're the ones who are going to have to take action to lengthen their dog's life. A silly example comes to mind. So my parents-in-law, they have a little mixed breed. Her name's Kenna. She's so cute and adorable. She's starting to become overweight because she just roams around their 5 acres in the country in Kentucky, and all of the neighbors feed her too. So they don't really know like what they're feeding her. And then she comes home and she gets like, double breakfast, double dinner. So I imagine if they take this test, the Wolfspan test, it shows her biological age is older. Maybe then it, I don't know, starts or prompts a conversation with the neighbors like, hey, don't feed my dog anymore. Or like, what are you feeding it? So I can like lessen the amount of food I'm feeding it, because I think the obesity in animals is hard because parents don't want to take away food too.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we've definitely ran into that with all the animals we've owned. They love to eat, and it's definitely the joy of having an animal is you love to feed them, and neighbors as well. A similar example with our present dog Winston. He's a very large golden doodle, and he lives to eat for sure. But this test is able to provide a little bit of a wake up for the owner, to be able to see objectively that this is having a tangible impact on the health span of the animal. But then to also be able to see that improve over the course of the life of the animal. And so for us, it's a report card, if you will, that you hope to be able to see it improve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, and I know you all have some veterinarians on board as well at Wolfgenics. So from a vet perspective, if we're just talking even like generalized terms here, you can talk, I don't know, lifestyle, supplement, medication, any procedural based therapies. What are some of the most promising ways that we can help our little best friends live longer and healthier lives? Or maybe what are some of the types of recommendations that you all would be giving back on the report?
Yeah. So we recently brought on Dr. Brooke Owens onto the team as our director of veterinary medicine. She's absolutely amazing. We've learned just a tremendous amount from her, and just, the 3-4 months she's been involved with the team. She's very much a rare breed in terms of she's mainly focused on concierge care. She works in the South Florida, Miami area. And I would say just learning from her and understanding the industry, the best practices definitely would be to have a relationship with a veterinarian, to have, I think, early and often proactive and preventative testing. And this is going back to our concierge program, what wellness is, really trying to create blood testing or promote blood testing to be more mainstream. I think there's so much we can gain from understanding or getting baselines for different testing, urinalysis, stool testing, blood testing. So definitely doing that to get a base, because most veterinarian care is reactive. So we need to get a good base and have a good understanding of what could be preventable. And that's very much breed specific. I think having a good exercise and diet routine is another one. So I think both those, is just to start, are really a must to give your dog the best chance. Is make sure they're not overweight, make sure they have a good fitness routine. And even there's actually pretty interesting literature now talking about seemingly obvious, but also, sometimes these studies are helpful as a reminder on social interactions. So the benefits of just your dog having friends, so to speak, going out to the park. So these kind of just base factors of trying to be the best pet owner you can be, those are really important. But there's a lot of changes that occur that you can look at in the blood, as an example, that are really important to ensure that your dog doesn't have conditions with their thyroid, or there's not preventative actions that could be taken earlier, which is also what we're obviously trying to do with Wolfspan, but all very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of it's what we see on the human side is diet and exercise is big. I think there's just one point, and it seems obvious, but I think it's important to keep in mind that, a dog can't necessarily take itself on a walk. And so as an owner, it's important to realize that, what your dog is consuming and the exercise your dog gets is the direct, byproduct of its owner. And so just, keeping that in mind that your dog can't necessarily, cook its own food and take itself on a walk. And so it's important as an owner to realize that these are two very big levers to pull in improving your dog's health span. And hopefully very soon we'll be able to show that, objectively.
Yeah, I think a couple things come from that. I think that was a great point, Nick. Owner education, like about the breed, about the dog that they're getting, is really important. Say, for example, like a shepherd, right, that needs a lot of exercise. If, you work 60, 70 hours a week, probably not the best dog for you. If you can't walk away from the computer, can't kind of go and throw the frisbee or take them to a dog park and socialize them as well. That's really big for those breeds. That's probably why I choose really lazy breeds now. So they just need one walk around the block and, they're good for the day, or, they do one sprint and they're like done. It's less work on our end as owners. And then Chris, you made a good point as well, a relationship with your vet. Yep. I know I don't have one. I know I love my vet. They're really great people. I feel like they've always taken great care of my dogs, which is kind of why I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a little girl. But I would only go when there was a problem. So I would only take Evie, more recently to the vet when she had worms, for example, to get a medication. I would just take her when she needed shots or updated, heart guard, flea and tick medicine. I don't think I've ever taken her for something preventable. So that's super interesting. As we start to see this preventative longevity medicine explode within the human world, it's like, why wouldn't we do that for our companion animals as well?
Yeah, it's we can't preach enough, having worked with, vets like Dr. Owens and others, that vets are just they are a fountain of knowledge in terms of prevention, but most of the time they don't get to really exercise that because, your dog, like in this case, our childhood dog, Sunny, he's starting to throw up blood. So you take him to the vet, he has stomach cancer, right? So there is obviously at some point a limit to what can be done. But if you start early enough, and this is where bringing back the education piece we're so interested in, is we're going to be bringing out a lot of veterinarians, veterinary technicians on the app and saying, what breed should I be getting? How do I take better care of them? And motivating more of that connection, facilitating one-on-one calls with veterinarians in our group, but also trying to work with vet clinics across the country and really commercializing this idea of also having the biological aids coupled to blood testing. Because if you have, and I would say, if everyone's listening to this, is call up your vet and just ask questions. I think most people maybe either don't have access to that. If you don't, try to figure out a way to access that. But it's such an important piece that there's a lot that can be done. There's a strategy. It's a care plan, no different than anything else for yourself or a family member.
Exactly. And I think to add to that a little bit too is Wolfgenics in general is not looking to replace any of, current relationships with veterinarians. It's meant to be a supplement. And so to use the app, which is, easy connectivity to, like Chris is saying, vet techs and Wolfgenics licensed veterinarians, this can kind of start the conversation, can be an easy way to ask these, proactive questions. But really it's a supplement to your current, relationship with your vet. So I think to get back to your point, Hannah, is, we would encourage people to seek out local connections to their vets, ensure that you have that proper connection, but then to also supplement that with Wolfgenics community.
Yeah, my vet was so friendly. Evie would have seizures as well, and I would just call them up, and I'm like, oh, they probably want me to bring her in. And, we ended up playing a bunch of phone tags. So I did bring, her in. They did a small consultation charge. They looked over her, made sure everything was okay, but they were willing to have a conversation with me over the phone. I think they tried calling me back 5 times, which is crazy. And so it's just, free knowledge, education that I could use to be a better pet owner too. So I'm super excited for your education that's coming out on the app. I know you all have a lot of great things in the work that'll become more public soon. Maybe even by the time we publish this, we can link out to a lot of those things and, relationships, collaborations, other studies that you all are doing. It'd be super cool to even have, I'm sure there's something out there like that. But I bet you all could do it better, which is what dog breed should I have? And, based on their lifestyle, kind of what they do, you all could recommend something, and it would just make everyone a little bit better in terms of owning a dog too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I mentioned rapamycin just briefly. I know, so there's some really, really exciting work going on, even out of Loyal, the dog company as well. So they more recently, it's probably been, 6 or 9 months ago now, have brought what they think is the first drug explicitly approved and labeled for healthy lifespan. extension known as the LOY-001. Are you all also looking into that drug? They've gotten, conditional approval application for the use of that drug in large dog lifespan extension, which is really, really about inhibiting IGF-1. And they may think there's this connection where high IGF-1 levels are what causes, dogs to grow really large when they're young. But we know high IGF-1 levels in adult dogs may be believed to accelerate aging and reduce their healthy lifespan. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think in short, dog longevity as a treatment modality is definitely it's almost here. I would say it's coming. And Loyal has made great strides, and it's an example that I think the capital markets are investing aggressively into what otherwise will be, I think, a very popular choice for owners in the coming future, or at least a decision to make is, do I invest in this? Now, I still think we're a ways off from really trying to better understand which dogs will benefit. So I'm curious as to what their development pipeline looks like in the near future. But I think others, groups, if you even look in the academic world, the Dog Aging Project has made incredible strides. Looking at rapamycin as yes, a treatment modality, but just trying to understand kind of its potential implications with lifespan and health span. We've taken the stance of WebGenix. We're curious to really build out the most knowledge we can have about how dogs age and use that to develop the most granular report card that we can at different life stages. So to work with drug development companies and to work with, labs and other innovators to try to understand how this can be used in conjunction with those prescription modalities. I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens with how dogs react, side effects, how they track the progress. Obviously, with any clinical trial, not every dog's going to be reacting productively. I think from my understanding of what Loyal is doing is they're attacking a very, very small subset to make, and it makes sense from a development perspective. But I think other drugs, rapamycin, is obviously a popular one, is definitely something I think you probably could have a larger effect on a larger number of dogs, but something that will still to be determined.
Yeah, I think that we think it's about, again, getting back to the objectivity of, using things like Wolfspan to understand what's moving the needle. We know that there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, whether it's rapamycin, whether it's, a drug that's being developed by Loyal. We're curious to understand the impact on, dogs in general and to see if that's actually having a tangible impact, knowing, again, that there's not like a one-size-fits-all solution.
And we also, there hasn't been to date an example of epigenetics being used to get a drug approved, but this is very much with dogs is, this has always been a debate in human healthcare is how do we get drugs approved quicker? And that's definitely some things coming down the pipeline for what WebGenix is trying to use these tests. I think we even spoke about this, Hannah, earlier, to motivate and kind of better understand what that step, what action could be taken. And so we're doing our own investigations actually using rapamycin with various clinics in South Florida. So we're curious that those results should be, the first results should be back in about a year. But I think you're going to see an explosion of different companies coming into this space, which is exciting because I think it's also going to have an impact on human health.
Yeah, definitely. And you all can work together and kind of look at each other's data, see what's working, what's not. It's just hard, obviously easier in dogs because they have those shorter lifespans, but we need that outcome data as well, right? Did the dogs develop XYZ? I don't know if there are like dog biobanks. I don't know if that's what the Dog Aging Project is trying to do. So I enrolled Evie in the Dog Aging Project. Their mission directly from their website is that they conduct a lot of rigorous scientific research designed to define, explain, and ameliorate the effects of aging. So they've really built this community of volunteers, researchers who all have a love for dogs, and they're really committed to helping dogs and humans live longer, healthier lives together. And they do so by having you, enroll in this study, enter. The questions they asked, like I didn't even think I knew the answer to about just how your dog behaves, what they eat. They would have you do certain like agility courses with your dog and like time them, and they would have you kind of update those even, I think, every 6 months to every 12 months as well, so they could really track the progress. So it was really, really cool what they were collecting. I'm sure that data is invaluable to companies like WebGenix and others studying the same thing.
Yeah, and Matt Kaibelin's actually on our team as one of our advisors, and the work him, Daniel Promisel, and the rest of the Dog Aging Project have done is just absolutely exceptional. And we wish them the best with getting as much funding from the NIH as possible. And they're doing not just, I think, a lot of this biobanking and development, but also, like you're saying, they're really tracking the dogs over the course of their life, So it's exciting to see their papers that come out, and hopefully, many more to come with, I think, related back to more of the intervention side.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. We're getting to the end there. I just have a couple more questions for you all. For people who are fascinated, they're listening, they want to get involved in dog aging research. There's a lot of things they can do. Like, is it the dog aging project? Is it, taking a sample with Genix? Is it just signing up for the app? Like, what would you recommend people doing directly?
Yeah, so I think, and this is a question we get a lot, is like, how are you, there's already the dog aging project. And our answer to that is, of course, but there definitely needs to be as many avenues active at any one time, as many shots on goal, so to speak. And so from our perspectives, we have more granular objectives, trying to get some of these epigenetic tests to a commercial means to help as many dogs as will get that mass market. So owners can come on and go to woofgenix.com. They can always participate in our studies. And if they qualify, we'll ship them buckle capture kits like you did with Evie. With that as well, we have actually an evolving process where we're kickstarting additional trials and additional studies. Some of these are actually going to be more partnered with local clinics. So as our website evolves, which it will over the next few weeks and months, is there'll be more opportunities people can see if they qualify for. We're going to be doing some big dog studies. We're going to be doing specific breed studies. So for us, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And with that, to give mine as well, there's a lot of other exceptional groups, Dog Aging Project and others, that I'd always say is, if you have, let's say, a golden retriever or any particular breed, usually, like you said with Burmese Mountain Dogs, there's usually groups, nonprofits, organizations that are doing interesting work. So if you really want to get involved, just do some research, contact your local veterinarian. I do know that some projects are still open with the Dog Aging Project. I think others are closed, but I would definitely tell dog owners that we are relying on kind of the citizen science approach to get as much information as possible. There's not the same degree or we haven't accumulated the same level of biobanks as we have in the human space. So we're very much reliant on people getting involved.
We're growing WoofGenix from a community perspective, which again is why we have the app. So I think probably the easiest way is to download the app or just go to woofgenix.com. But just keeping in mind that, we're growing this from the community perspective. And so we want people's input. We want people to be involved. We want people to complete the surveys. And I think from the biobanking perspective, it kind of hits at the legacy effect. Is, your dog is stored in our biobanks and will be used for research to help dogs live longer in the future. And so obviously, unfortunately, dogs don't live forever. And so it kind of does impact that legacy, your dog has a legacy on, future dogs and generations. So definitely reach out to us. We're trying to grow this, with people in mind. And so we want people's feedback. We want people to participate and feel welcomed, and that's again, getting back to why we have the app.
Yeah, that's what I love too, is you all are really putting the community first. So it's like, if you build this community, everyone who's involved, they're adding data, they're meeting people. I think you all are doing even like meetups in Miami and things where people can even start to come in person. I think that's huge. And then I only think it's going to snowball and grow from there. So I'm so excited to watch you all grow. Looking ahead, this question's for both of you. What are each of you most excited about for the future of canine aging research? Is there, if you had to just name like one thing in particular, whether it's like what you're personally excited about or just like for WoofGenix and the company?
I mean, I think for myself is I'm excited to see, WoofGenix and other companies put prevention first and really trying to change the consumer landscape. I think that's always exciting when you go into a space that is so evolved. It's so fast evolving, the types of animals that people are getting, the way, people are having kids later in life. I mean, these animals they're like fur babies, so to speak. So I think from mine, I'm just excited to see a lot of the science that has been kept in the human world be applied to dogs, but also just kind of, I think, create a new narrative and try to make it more mainstream about the idea of prevention that is very much here. It's economical. It's not something that is only available to the rich. It's very much something that people can afford. So I think really for us, it's just going to be exciting to kind of see that play out. And I think very shortly over the next few months, actually, when we get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anytime you can come into a space and disrupt it and see, other companies try to, follow suit with what you're doing from an innovation perspective is definitely very motivating. But I mean, in a nutshell is, the WoofGenix ideology is helping dogs live healthier longer. And so to be able to objectively measure that and say that, the things that we're doing as a company, we're living up to that mission. And so we're actually able to, provide those, healthy years back to the owners. And unfortunately, dogs can't live forever, but that's very much, the objective goal of Wolfgenics.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point too, Chris, is when you start to look at like the dollar amount or the figure that goes behind prevention, this happens obviously in like human health as well, the sick care model versus healthcare model, but vet bills can be so expensive and out of the blue, right? And if you can just catch something early and then save those thousands of dollars on the back end by not having to go into surgery or not having to, put the dog under during surgery. Just the relief on the owner and the actual pet, and not having to go through the healing process could be huge. So just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, very much a concierge space that's affordable. I think some huge big ticket networks on the human side that are seemingly unaffordable, out of pocket. This is definitely something that our goal is to make this as high impact as possible, not just in the US, but globally as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. My last question for you all, I ask every one of my guests who come onto the podcast. It's really relatable for this episode. If you all could be any animal in the world, what would you be and why? And some people have said dogs.
Interesting.
They have.
Interesting.
Any animal in the world.
Seems off brand if we don't choose a dog. Is that
You can choose. You don't have to choose a dog. You all get a pass. Some people are like, oh, I've known this answer. They're like, wait a second, I have no idea.
Oh wow.
I think I would choose to be an elephant. They seem they have a lot of freedom, I think, and they're still like a species that I think has good respect and good obviously longevity, but they have a good family, I think, community of animals. I think, they're a very matriarchal species, but they also have one that I think I think their diet, they seem like they're doing something right towards longevity. So I would say elephant.
There you go. Well, if I weren't to choose a dog, I would probably choose, I've always been fascinated by the orca within, the dolphin family. I think kind of hitting back at the idea of families, their strong family community, but they're also very different. I mean, they're all over the world, and a lot of their diets based upon how they were raised, and to my knowledge, there's actually been no recorded human fatalities in the wild, and so I find that actually quite interesting that there's such an elegant, such a powerful animal, yet it's not had any negative effects on humans from that perspective. But if it wasn't an orca, I'd probably choose a golden retriever.
Perfect. Yeah, no one has said elephant or orca. And I think both answers are similar. I've seen like videos of like elephants like joking with humans and like hiding, their hats or something under their trunk and like joking with them. And then same for orcas, like you see them circling like kayaks and kind of playing with humans too. So just a fun question to end on. But thanks so much, Chris and Nick. This was awesome. I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes where people can find you. Remember, you can download the Wolfgenics app if you all want to become a little bit more involved. They're, solely relying on the community to help drive this research. And you can go to wolfgenics.com to see if you have a pup and they qualify for the study. So with all that being said, thanks everyone for listening and joining us at the Everything Epigenetics podcast. Remember, you have control over your epigenetics, so tune in next time to learn more. Thanks, Nick and Chris.
Thank you so much.